Welcome back to another Quarter Notes. This is a video series that I love to do where I get to look at 4 albums that I've been listening to that I want to talk about, but I don't quite have enough to say for a full-length album review. It kind of relieves the pressure of me trying to find things to say and like going track for track or something along those lines. And this one's a little bit of a special one because these are 4 albums that were released all within the same time period. Like, I'm pretty sure most of these were released a couple weeks ago. So I've been listening to them and getting into them. I know that there's quite a bit of buzz around most of them. So yeah, I decided to kind of stretch my legs and try something a little bit different because these are some albums that are from artists that are in some respects very outside of my wheelhouse, and I don't have a whole lot of experience talking about these, so be gentle. But you know, I wanted to kind of add my hat to the conversation. So let's talk about these 4 albums. I'm pretty excited about it. Let's just get right into this.
Paint yourself white, clip on the wings, climb high.
Daddy's Home by St. Vincent. So this is, I believe, the 7th studio recording from St. Vincent, the American singer, songwriter, producer, by Annie Clark. Annie Clark. She was originally a member of the Polyphonic Spree, which is like one of my darling bands. Like, I really love their Together We're Heavy and the Fragile Army. The beginning stages is okay. There's still some really good stuff on there. And yes, it's true we can leave that one to the wayside. Anyway, this is a St. Vincent album review. This isn't on the Polyphonic Spree. So anyway, coming from that very symphonic, very like psychedelic art rock gamut, this is also my first foyer, if that's a word, foyer into St. Vincent. Now, I kind of heard of St. Vincent on my peripheries, knowing that she had come from the Polyphonic Spree. It kind of perked my interest. So I decided to dive into the latest album of Daddy's Home. It's been making its circuit and getting some pretty rave reviews, and I gotta add my voice to that because yeah, this album is 100% a banger. I've really been finding myself loving this album. It has the kind of singer-songwriter, more intimate approach to music, kind of coupled with this like 70s throwback where there's a lot of this 70s funk or even 70s symphonic or psychedelic styles of music. There's a lot of tracks on here that really resonate that style of music. There's a little bit of polish, but not so much polish that it shines too bright. And there's a number of tracks on here that I continuously come back to. I love the fact that there's a number of interludes on this album to give the listener a little bit of a breath of fresh air between some of these more compact tracks, like the first handful of tracks being Pay Your Own Way in Pain, Down and Out Downtown, and Daddy's Home are a little bit more on the rocker side. They're a little bit more intense. They're not like a full bored rock track, but they definitely have that more energetic. So by the time you get to Live in a Dream and The Melting of the Sun, it starts to kind of mellow out a little bit. So like the actual flow of this album is quite tasty, and I like kind of the ebb and flow. Now, the ones that I particularly love and dive into quite heavily are Somebody Like Me. And I love these kind of overtones and these harmonizations between the different musical expressions that we have on here. It's so smooth. It feels like a viscous honey that's been kind of spread along like really warm, like a dinner roll. I find myself coming back to this album a lot. I love it. And this is one that I'm easily going to pick up in physical format. In terms of like a pop, more mainstream artist, this is one that I highly recommend. And it is one of those, run, don't walk to go and listen to. So yeah, the praise that this album is getting is very well established. So yeah, that's what I've got for this one. Let's move on.
Do you feel this beauty within you? Just one little thing to be aware of, it wants to.
Intruder by Gary Numan. So Gary Numan, the only reason why I knew about this guy was his big hit from the 70s or 80s. That's All About That Car. It's like, riding my car, I am riding my car. And that's the only song that I know from him. In my mind, he's kind of a one-hit wonder, and I'm sure people are immediately typing, well, what about this song? What about this album? And he's done so much more for the musical industry than just that one song. Sure, I know. I don't know about it. I've never gotten into him. So this popped up, and a few of my fans had said that I should check it out. I've seen it run the gamut in terms of the musical landscape and the reviews, and it's been getting pretty positive reviews. And this album is one of those that it's interesting, it's definitely, it has its roots in that 80s new wave sound, but in much more of a darker expression. I almost feel like this is almost like a Scott Walker light album. It's not as dark, it's not as experimental, it's not as grating, or you're like, oh, what's going on? What creepy haunted forest am I in? But it's that same kind of expression. It's that same kind of darkness that you find yourself in. It's very moody. It's very atmospheric. And it provides a very interesting and almost eclectic sound from start to finish when you actually sit down and listen to this guy. There is a little bit of ebb and flows, but it does stay very centered on the mean of the overall album. There's not too much deviations from the mean in this album. It's all very centered stage in that sense. So if you're not connecting with this album within the first 2 or 3 tracks, you can probably put it on the shelf and not revisit it, because the rest of the album is very similar to those first 3 tracks. But if you're into this more moody, dark, self-reflective, almost criticizing album, and you want something a little bit more atmospheric, then this one is a good time. I found myself really digging it when that mood struck. But if I'm not in that mood, I wouldn't recommend this album, honestly. So this is one that, I would download. It's one that I would revisit when that mood strikes, but it's not one that I would actively seek out. So yeah, this one's getting a download for me. Let's move on. Olivia Rodrigo's Sour. So Olivia Rodrigo is the new kind of flavor of the month in terms of the big pop stars. I always like to kind of keep my eye to the ground, or I guess my ear to the ground rather, of the next big craze that's going on in the pop sphere. I'm not a big fan of pop music, but I always like to know what's going on. And this was the one that it's kind of that big next thing, right? She got her start on, I want to say it was either School of Rock or High School Musical, one of the Disney Channel things. I know I could have done a little bit more research, but hey, what are you going to do? And so this is her first full-length album after dropping an explosive EP and single of Driver's License that really took the world by storm. I see it a lot popping up on TikTok because, I'm a mid-millennial, so I downloaded the app ironically, thinking that it was just going to be Vine.2, and now I just, spend way too many hours on it. So I do see this, that track coming up. And I mean, for a pop album, it's quite good. I like the self-expression. The overall theme of this album is kind of the first love and the loss of it and the betrayal that's felt within it. And I mean, I have to be perfectly honest, I lyrically cannot identify with this album, and that's fine. I know this album isn't made for me. I'm a white suburban male in my 30s. Of course, it's not going to connect with me. I didn't have really my first real love until 30, and it's still working out fine. So, I can't connect with that whole heartbreak. I trusted you. I loved you. We went on our dates together. We thought we were the ones. We thought it was going to be forever. And now you're dating one of my best friends, or you're dating this other woman. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I can't connect with it. I can understand and I appreciate it. I can empathize with what's going on, or I guess I can sympathize. That's a really big heartache, especially for teenagers now, where, a lot of their best years, the times when they're supposed to self-discover and find out who they really are, experiment with things, see what they like and what they don't like, was essentially taken away by this whole pandemic because they've been locked away inside. So yeah, that really sucks. And I feel for them. Being a teenager is hard enough without a global pandemic squishing you down. So yeah, there's a lot of angst on this album. You're seeing that within the music and the lyrics. A lot of it's very melodramatic. It's very, the first album out that's tackling these kinds of things for Olivia on this. And, I have to applaud her. The music, though, just isn't quite for me. But, I appreciate and I understand what's going on this. I see what she's trying to do, and I think she does that very, very successfully. I think a lot of these tracks are big bangers that I think a lot of teenagers are going to connect with and really identify with. So I think that's going to be a great treat for anybody that's in this culture. It's just not for me. So, the rating that I would give is a skip to a stream. But I also applaud Olivia for, putting out this artistic work that I think she succeeded in what she was doing. So in that sense, it's a successful album. It's just not one that I would return to or revisit with. So yeah, that's what I've got. Witness by VOLA. So a lot of people are probably going to be wondering why I put this on a quarter notes instead of doing a full-length album review. And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really have a whole lot to say about VOLA. Yeah, VOLA is one of those metal progressive rock bands that I never really connected all that with. Applause for a Distant Crowd, which came out in 2018. I know made a huge splash, and I know a lot of people love this album. And I didn't. I'm not a big fan, or it has to be used very, very properly, of the djent movement. And I feel like these guys do lean a little bit more towards the djent style of music, the very technical, progressive chords, the very analytical styling of music. It's almost very mathematical in how they lay out their chord progressions and their musical movements. And I know a lot of people are going to be defending these guys in my comments section. I'm not saying that these guys are a bad band. I'm just saying that they don't necessarily resonate or connect with me. I don't know. There's something about these guys that I feel like other bands, such as like Tesseract or Periphery, or I'm trying to think of another really, really big one, but like those are the ones that are immediately coming to mind. I feel like they're doing this style of music a little bit better. And I understand that these guys are kind of like that next step. And I do appreciate the fact that they're pushing the music forward. And Witness is this next album from them. So it was released this year, 9 songs over 44 minutes, and there are some tracks on here that I genuinely do like. Like, I do like the Head Mountain Sideways. I like how it's a little bit darker, a little bit heavier, a little bit meatier, and I do like the first half, or I guess half the track, of These Black Claws. I like how dark it is. I love how menacing it is. But once, is it Shaman? Once Shahaman comes on, it's a little weird. I'm not a big fan of the rapping styles that we have over it. I do recognize and I do advocate that if progressive rock wishes to go through the next movement of music and kind of make themselves relevant again, we do need to cross-pollinate however we can to become a little bit more relevant. But I don't know, it just feels like it's a little bit out of place. My favorite track by far is probably Freak. I'm a little bit more of a fan of this one. I like the chord progression of this. I love the ebb and flow of this track a little bit more. It's got a little bit more teeth on it. But overall, this album did not convert me to the cult of VOLA that I know a lot of people are loving. And I am very pleased that they are finding this album and enjoying this. But like a few albums that I've already talked about on this quarter notes, this one just wasn't quite for me, and there wasn't quite enough for me to talk about outside of giving it a try, giving it a spin, seeing if I liked it or not, and it's just not quite for me. So again, this one's one that I would stream or skip. If you've been trying these kind of djent metal styles of progressive rock or progressive metal music, and Periphery and Tesseract hasn't quite done it for you, I'm not quite sure if VOLA will be the one to convert you, but it might be the one that gets you interested in them. Honestly, I would go for the much more technical styles of like Animals as Leaders. Like, those would be my star performers in this style of music. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for Witness. Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame. But I mean, that's where I'm at. So those are my 4 albums. That's what I've got for you guys this time on my little adventure. What did you guys think? What was your favorite of the bunch? What was your least favorite of your bunch? I always recommend to people, go out, experiment, see if there's a style of music that you're not quite getting, and always dip your toe into it, because that's what I like to do. And that's why I was listening to a lot of these guys. Most of these ones I wouldn't have spared a passing day on, but I mean, I've been loving St. Vincent's album, and I've been revisiting it a lot. I think it'll most likely end up in my top 10 albums of the year, and I wouldn't have done that if I didn't explore and give something a try. So that's going to be my homework or call to action for you guys. Find an album that's come out this year and give it a spin that's outside of your normal wheelhouse. You might be surprised. So that's what I got. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.